someone who actually kind of liked school and kind of found it fairly easy? Did you get satisfaction from achieving high grades and studying stuff that interests you? Did you find that either university or the working world was suddenly a lot harder? If so, this video might be for you. Hello and welcome to Through the Noise Coaching. My name is Lee and I'm a leadership coach specialised in growing the careers of mid to senior neurospices. And I'm talking about this topic today because it seems to be a recurring theme among the people who walk through the virtual doors of my coaching practice. Many of my clients, whether they identify with a name or not, tend to be 2E, twice exceptional. This is a term given to someone who is exceptional in more than one way. They are gifted, but they also have something like ADHD, autism, dyslexia, or another form of neurodivergence, which can make life a little bit harder. People that are gifted usually have a reasonable time when it comes to the academic side of school, although they might find the social side a little bit harder. They might develop vocabulary really young or pick up extracurricular skills at a lightning pace. There's a stereotype of the autistic maths nerd, which, if I'm honest, is probably me. I do kind of fit that stereotype, but it doesn't have to be maths. It can be people who love drama, who love music, who excel at other subjects, including even sports. From my experience, the martial arts world tends to be full of neurospices. The thing about 2E is that there becomes this kind of expectation of high performance, that we're always going to be high achievers, we're always going to be doing amazing at everything we undertake. We performed well as children, why wouldn't we perform to a high standard all throughout our lives? But eventually, unless we're really lucky, we hit a point where this high performance isn't quite so easy to come by anymore. The sudden squeeze on the brakes happens at different times for different people. There are incredibly bright, gifted people who go on to university and really struggle to just get through it because the way that university is structured completely clashes with their neurodivergence. There are perfectly capable people who never even make it there in the first place. Yet others entered the working world and found difficulties for the first time there. Some even after years of having a successful career until suddenly they hit a wall and things start to go wrong. I know I myself was in this latter category until things started to fall down around me. Regardless of when in your life and career this happens, it tends to fit a similar pattern. That feeling of pressure to be performing at such a high standard when anything less than top performance ends up feeling like a failure. This is a huge weight to carry because being gifted can become part of your identity, whether that means that you become quite arrogant or whether you are quietly holding yourself to a higher standard than you hold for others to. And when we suddenly find things a lot harder, we begin to question this. We can feel like we've lost our identity, and were we ever as gifted as we thought or people thought we were? Many of my clients arrive at my door when they're in the middle of going through this, or they've gone through this and they're on their way out over the other side of it. And there's a lot of similar themes that arise. There's a lot of feeling like, I don't know how I got here. I'm doubting myself. I don't actually know what I'm good at. What if the things that I was good at, I'm not good at anymore? I've lost the things that I'm good at. So I wanted to spend this video talking a little bit about how people tend to get there and share some of the experiences of my clients, and also one of the ways in which we can tackle this to try and make things a little bit better. So in order to contextualize this, I actually want to go back to school because school is one of the things that absolutely dominates our young lives. And school has a benefit. School has a benefit of structure, which is something that is super important to both ADHD and autistic brains. I spoke about this a little bit more in my previous video on how to make work more ADHD and autism friendly, but it is true that even though ADHD fights structure at every corner, it's hugely beneficial for ADHD brains to have that structure imposed around us. And it's also hugely beneficial for autistic brains who love structure and consistency as well. So if you look back at school, this is what it was. 5 days a week, you'd go to the same place for the same number of hours in the day. You'd have a consistent lunch break. You'd have a timetable that you go between. For the ADHDers, the lessons changed up quite regularly, so we got that variety in the day. And even if you did get bored, then if you were a high performer, then chances are that teachers were a bit more lenient about you doodling in a notebook or playing with a Rubik's Cube or whatever the other stuff that I did when I was bored in class. For those of us autistic, the routine was also comforting. There were rules around when we needed to be in certain places, and once we knew the rules, we could settle into that routine and things felt a lot better. School also has clear expectations, and that's actually a discussion I've had with one of my clients a lot. In the working world, these expectations often aren't quite so clear, and there might not be a definition of when something is done. What does done look like for certain things? With school, we tended to have that decided for us already. Homework was set with an objective definition of what finish meant. We knew when our exams were, we had a syllabus of what we had to learn, I know the social side of school could be really hard for people who are neurodivergent, with trouble making friends and bullying, but from an academic side, if your brain loved that structure, then you likely did pretty well. So the step from school to university or work was a huge one. Suddenly you had to structure your own time. There were no mark schemes to check your work against, or bosses who knew everything that could help you work out the final solution and tell you where you got there, tell you when you got there. As part of this, you acquired so much more responsibility, but the thing was, that was never on the syllabus. You were never actually taught how to deal with this responsibility. And so this all builds up and this stress accumulates over time. One of the most powerful quotes that recontextualize my own crisis and ADHD diagnosis and career pivot and all that good stuff comes from the paper, "It's like it's designed to keep me stressed, working sustainably with ADHD and autism." And I've read this quote out a number of times on this channel and quoted it in the comments of many TikToks, but I'm gonna tell you it again because I think it's so powerful. It goes, "It was not that they had poor self-esteem. They were being broken down by always being at the end of their tether." And this is what I think of when I think of a 2E person who goes from being this super gifted high performer to someone who's just hit a wall and is suddenly struggling. It does a massive hit to their self-esteem, but that comes from being constantly at the end of their tether for such a long period of time. And of course, when we get to this point, it has compounding effects. When our self-esteem drops, we're more likely to suffer from something like imposter syndrome, thinking that all of our great successes before weren't actually real, we're not actually that person anymore, we're just waiting to be found out, we're just an imposter full of self-doubt. The more we feel like this, the more we start actually holding ourselves back. I spoke about this with someone I was working with recently, actually. He'd had a number of roles over his career and a really desirable technical background, like this guy is super smart, but he'd been applying for grad jobs and none of them were coming back to him at all. Despite his years of experience, by the way. He said to me the words that I've heard in some format from so many of the people that I work with. He said, "The trouble is, I don't really know what I'm good at." This is coming from someone who's an excellent programmer, who's got an amazing mathematical brain that he can flex the chemistry and physics as well. And he's telling me that he doesn't think he's good at anything. He's not the only one. Another client came to me saying he'd just been given a new leadership position and he had no idea how he'd got here. He thought he must be good at something, but he had no idea what it was. He had no idea how to leverage what he was good at to go forwards and be good at this leadership position. He just had no idea what it was that made him good. Despite having a boss that had seen something in him to put him in that position, he just had no idea how to be a leader or just do anything. A third client, a freelancer who had been handpicked for a particular project, she turned around to me one day and said, "I feel like I'm not good." We're measuring good the wrong way. School taught us to measure good based on marks, based on scores, based on grades, but the real world doesn't work like that. That's not transferable. We don't pass a promotion like passing an exam, although it seems like the equivalent kind of thing. You know, getting a new role, finding a new job, taking on promotions, yeah, that can be seen as the equivalent, but you can't just go ahead and pass them through just learning and trying really hard like you did at school. Instead, we need to find out what we are fundamentally good at, the unique ways in which we work that bring a benefit that very few others in this world can actually bring. I'm talking about the people that ideate, that come up with so many creative ideas for solving different problems. I'm talking about brains that are able to uncover the unique talents of the people that they work with and bring those talents out so that they can make a team work together to get the best out of both the team as a whole and the individuals within it. Super hard to do. I'm talking about brains that are able to take control of a chaotic situation and move a group forwards instead of being paralyzed and panicking in a situation that is really stressful and not great. Some brains have this amazing ability to move through that and get people out to the other side. This stuff isn't taught at school, and it's not something that you can just learn and then pass a test on and suddenly, yeah, this is now a skill that you have. But the truth is, there are strengths like this inside all of us. We just don't tend to know what they are. One of the things that I work with my clients on is actually finding out what those strengths are. We often do a strength assessment, and after that we find that the times when they're doing best in their career, when they're enjoying their career the most, and not just career, life in general, by the way, it extends to that, are times when they are using their strengths. And by knowing what they are and knowing when they feel good and knowing when they are successful, we can work out how best they can use their strengths to start moving forwards again. It's a journey, and people don't recover from a confidence knock overnight. But by knowing what these strengths are and using them in our daily life and in our jobs, we can start on that journey to becoming the best person that we can be. So with that in mind, I'm going to bring this video to a close. I actually recently put out a video about my favourite strength assessment tool, so I'm going to leave a link up here so you can go back and watch it if you're interested in finding out a little bit more. Otherwise, that's it for today. Please like, comment and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thank you for your attention today.